The return of Daniel Ricciardo in Formula 1. It's official, the prodigal son returns to Formula 1. After much speculation and whispers that Daniel Ricciardo could return to the grid at some point this season, we finally will see the Honeybadger racing in a move which saw Red Bull sacking Nyck De Vries from Alpha Tauri and replacing him with Daniel Ricciardo until the end of 2023. But while this was expected, the fact that Ricciardo accepted driving a much weaker car than the RB19 proves that there is something more to this move than meets the eye. Alpha Tauri, the second team of Red Bull in Formula 1, has removed Nyck De Vries from their roster, making room for Daniel Ricciardo, winner of 8 Grand Prix races, to join the team. Ricciardo's transfer to Alpha Tauri for the rest of 2023 is being referred to by Red Bull as him being on loan, making him the third driver to be part of their squad this season. Press statements from both Red Bull and Alpha Tauri fail to highlight De Vries, aside from Alpha Tauri's team principal Franz Tost acknowledging De Vries' valuable contribution. "I'm very pleased to welcome Daniel back into the team," said Tost. "There's no doubt about his driving skill, and he already knows many of us, so his integration will be easy and straightforward. The team will also profit a lot from his experience, as he is an 8-time Formula 1 Grand Prix winner. I would like to thank Nyck for his valuable contribution during his time with Scuderia AlphaTauri, and I wish him all the best for the future." De Vries' removal from the team happened just 10 races into the season. The 28-year-old racer joined Red Bull's roster for the 2023 season after a commendable last-minute performance replacing Alex Albon at Monza in 2022, where he finished 9th. However, despite being a Formula E and Formula 2 champion, De Vries has faced challenges making his mark in his debut full season in F1. He is one of only 2 drivers yet to earn a point, with his highest achievement being 12th place at the Monaco GP. Additionally, he has been outqualified 7-2 by his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Questions regarding the stability of his position have been circulating for a while, and when team principal Franz Tost suggested that De Vries' future was determined by his performance in the problematic AT04 vehicle, it was suspected that Red Bull junior Liam Lawson might be the first to replace him. Currently, Lawson is competing in the Japanese Super Formula Series and is a title contender. He also had successful race wins in the F2 last season. Red Bull said in announcing Ricciardo's on-loan move to Alpha Tauri that it followed a strong performance in Wednesday's tyre test at Silverstone, which marks his first appearance in its RB19. "It is great to see Daniel hasn't lost any form while away from racing, and that the strides he has been making in his sim sessions translate on track," said Red Bull team principal Christian Horner. His times during the tyre test were extremely competitive. "It was a very impressive drive, and we are excited to see what the rest of the season brings for Daniel on loan at Scuderia AlphaTauri." After spending 4 seasons away, Ricciardo has made a comeback to the Red Bull team for 2023, following a challenging 2-year stint at McLaren. While he secured his 8th Grand Prix victory by leading a 1-2 finish at the Italian GP in 2021, Ricciardo faced difficulties last year with a McLaren MCL36 that had issues with corner entry. He was heavily outperformed by his teammate Lando Norris. His contract was bought out in its 3rd year to make space for newcomer Oscar Piastri. Ricciardo's initial breakthrough in F1 came when he was loaned from Red Bull while being on its junior team to the HRT squad in 2011. He then competed in his first full F1 season with the Toro Rosso team, which rebranded itself as Alpha Tauri in 2020. 7 of his 8 Grand Prix wins came during a 5-year spell at the senior Red Bull team from 2014 to 2018. Ricciardo was quoted by both Red Bull and Alpha Tauri as saying, "I am stoked to be back on track with the Red Bull family. I gotta say the decision appears unusual for both sides, considering that the same move could have been executed late last year, but was not feasible then. However, the situation has now changed. Ricciardo took a brief hiatus and initially did not want to participate this season. Yet his keen desire to return and prove his worth has prompted him to reassess his options differently than in previous years. His commitment to this decision is commendable. He could have easily retreated quietly or capitalized on his fame without further exertion. He could have let ego interfere, considering himself too superior to return to Red Bull's secondary team. But he's chosen differently. He's diving back into the action head first, which is exciting to observe and should be a thrill to watch unfold. And then you have Nyck De Vries' removal, which is intriguing, as it is true that he hasn't demonstrated stellar performance to make his dismissal unthinkable, but he also hasn't been the disaster typically warranting a mid-season dismissal either. Thus, it becomes challenging to strongly argue that the decision was either entirely right or terribly unjust. Perhaps this embodies the strange manner of his recruitment, filling a spot that wasn't anticipated by a company that showed no prior interest in him until his impressive stand-in performance for Williams at Monza. His tenure with the team was unstable from the start, hence it didn't take much to displace him. While De Vries' peak speed was slightly lower than teammate Yuki Tsunoda's, and his performance in the 10 Grand Prix races this year was inconsistent, he wasn't exceptionally slow, and there were moments of commendable performance. He also had a few misfortunes, such as the recent collision with Kevin Magnussen in Canada, and the subsequent penalty for forcing him off track in Austria due to overtaking rules that overlook the risk inherent in an around-the-outside maneuver. The harsh reality is that elite sports are extremely challenging, and most participants don't succeed. De Vries could have performed better, and if his stint had seen more high points considering the car's limitations, he would likely still occupy a race seat. Whether that would have lasted longer remains an open question. Considering that it had been apparent for some time that it was a matter of when, not if, De Vries would be dismissed, one has to question the rationale that led to the recruitment of a driver in whom the Red Bull group apparently had minimal confidence initially. The possibility of a fully revitalized Ricciardo performing at his peak is an enticing scenario for both Formula One and Red Bull. Presumably based on what Red Bull Racing and Helmut Marko have seen on their simulator, and possibly during this morning's tyre test, they're convinced that Ricciardo is now a definite improvement over De Vries. Additionally, from a marketing standpoint, having Ricciardo with his high profile and popularity in the US is beneficial. Given Perez's consistent struggle to maximize Red Bull's RB19's potential on Saturdays, the move also seems aimed at creating some pressure from below. However, Ricciardo's return to form isn't as guaranteed as it would have been before 2021. There are substantial risks for both sides if Ricciardo fails to meet the heightened expectations given his reputation and performance before his time at McLaren. This is a driver who was outperformed by Verstappen at Red Bull and who appeared markedly inferior to Norris. His arrival might significantly disrupt the team dynamic, particularly as Tsunoda has been emerging as a key player. Bringing a Grand Prix winner into the equation might necessitate a realignment, but after his lackluster stint at McLaren, can the team readily trust Ricciardo as a benchmark? And if he ends up being outdone by Tsunoda, Ricciardo's reputation might take a severe hit. Today's F1 cars, much stiffer, more idiosyncratic, and equipped with harder tires, are vastly different from those that Ricciardo gained fame with. His admission that he couldn't feel certain aspects of the 2022 McLaren that Norris could only heightens concern. Success in a simulator doesn't necessarily translate to real-world performance. In a perfect scenario, Ricciardo experiences a Nico Hülkenberg-style revival, a driver who Ricciardo was slightly faster than when they were teammates at Renault in 2019. Alternatively, his return could resemble Kimi Räikkönen's homecoming, a nostalgic farewell tour for a driver who wasn't the same as he was when he began. Formula One is a dynamic sport, and participants must adapt accordingly. While Ricciardo appears motivated, it might not be sufficient. So is this just a move for Ricciardo to eventually get a seat next to Verstappen? If he outperforms Yuki and demonstrates his superiority and the car's potential, then Red Bull may consider Iwasa or Lawson for the Alpha Tauri team next season, alongside Daniel or Yuki, depending on what they decide about Sergio Perez. There are many factors to consider in this decision. Red Bull is a global brand, and unlike Haas, where Mick Schumacher can repeatedly disappoint millions of viewers and still retain his seat for the season, they can't afford such repeated mishaps, particularly since it seems that Helmut Marko may feel personally embarrassed each weekend for endorsing Nick over Christian Horner's objections. Only time will tell, but until then, I personally am excited to see the Honeybadger back racing. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Do you think Ricciardo will do better than Nyck De Vries in Alpha Tauri? Thank you for watching Racing Zone, and we'll see you in the next one.